couple of things I do want to point out on page 2 there. New construction was down almost 12% from 99,492 to 87,703,958. That's still a hefty amount of new construction activity. Population projections, actually we just saw the Weldon Cooper Center put out a number for Warren County, 39,630 was the number. The good news is, looks like we're about this year's number should hit 40, which is good from an economic development standpoint. I know when we hit 30, the phone started ringing a little bit more than we were in the 20s. So I think that'll happen again when we hit 40. Obviously, as far as new projects, the Marriott Hotel, which will open up this spring, is one of the bigger projects. The first phase of IT Federal is under construction. We have the Royal Farms completed. We've got a couple sites at Riverton Commons, Valvoline car repair facilities under construction, and Taco Bell should be starting in the near future. That'll be the last 2 vacant pad sites there. Pleased to report, I mean, most of both shopping centers is leased. I would say they're like 90-95% leased out. There's a couple, the mattress store went vacant on the Crooked Run side, but they're looking at a couple uses to be able to put back in there. New construction activity, actually at the end of 18, of course we have our numbers back out, and it's 157, I believe. It's a little down below 17. It's the first year of new home starts. We're down since 2010. We also have one of the wettest years on record, and that has a tendency to slow things down. So, you know, I think you get held up on one job, you can't start the next one. So we would expect to be in that same, I'd say, you know, 160 to 180 range next year as well. Skip on forward to the MDA. That's the second document in the back. Preliminarily, what everybody wants to know, what happened to our fund balance? At the end of the current fiscal year, the unassigned fund balance of the general fund was $13,528,579. Now, that does not include about $1.9 million that we used in the current budget. Of that amount, 1.2 is for the school system. It also does not include last year's underspent amount for the school system of about $1 million. So in theory, if you pull that $3 million off, we're about $10.5 million, which is just below 10%. Our finance policies say we should be around 15%. So we're taking a pretty good cut into fund balance. Now, I will say the deal we struck with the school board is we would take half of last year's excess reserve, and rather than return it to them, help to offset that $1.2 million we gave them. So that $1.2 only cost us about $700,000. So we should, at the end of the day, end up about $11 million in fund balance. A few other notes here. 1, 2, 3, 4 pages in. County collection of property taxes, and property taxes will be real estate and personal property and machinery tools, exceeded prior year amounts by approximately $1.1 million. We've also continued to pay down our debt service. I think we paid down the net debt service reduction is over $6 million. Of course, that's paying our debt mostly on our schools. So, you know, you're a few years into it, you start paying a little more principal than interest every year on a lot of those bonds, which is a good thing. The next to the last page, just a couple items there. Our unemployment rate, 2.8%. I want to say we're one of the lowest, fifth lowest in the state. Came down from 3.5% a year ago. So unemployment's at a good clip. I like to say at that rate, anybody who wants to be employed is probably employed at that point, unless you're in transition. The county added about 330 jobs in 2017, and hopefully that'll continue to. But all those things are just good indicators for the economy overall. So again, all this is just draft until the audit's accepted by the board. So you're getting usually you get this, you've already accepted the audit. You're getting to see it ahead of time because we're essentially done with the audit.
Right, we're done
waiting for the EDA.
Waiting on.
Can we get
Looking at the picture overall, it looks like we're pretty strong average throughout.
We are, yeah. I think, like I said, I'd like to see our fund balance at 15%. It's down 10, but all things considered, we're still in pretty good shape.
How do you rate the 330 new jobs? Does that come from the state?
State. The unemployment commission reports. And of course, it's a 17 number, so it's always lagging a year, but
That's pretty good.
yeah. So if you're ready, Mr. Chair, go on to bullet 3, the 2019 general reassessment. And I will say, the Board of Equalization had their training yesterday. I think all but one member was able to take their training. Once they get their training, now Dan is going ahead and getting those names submitted to the clerk of the circuit court so they can be officially appointed by the court. They've got hearing dates set for March and April. They can hear and decide appeals from property owners. They can increase your assessment, decrease your assessment, or leave it the same based on the information provided. We put information on the website for folks to be able to see what they may need to bring with them when they come to their hearing if they schedule one. We've seen about a 10.4% increase in assessments, and that's got us
Residential or?
across the board, overall across the board. And obviously that means some people will be higher and some people will be lower.
South River's always higher.
And again, that's why I remind folks, it's driven sales, drive it. As you know, the drill, one of the things we have to do is we would have to equalize the tax rate. You can't have more than 101% of what you collected the year before, which means if we take our tax rate of 0.66 and multiply it by 10.4%, that's 6.8 pennies that have to be adjusted down, and then anything else, if you were to increase it back, you have to advertise that as a tax increase. That rule's been in place for probably almost 20 years. But in the old days, you leave tax rate the same. A lot of counties would say, look, we haven't raised taxes as much
Well,
as
we
the
were
same.
up to, what were we one time, weren't we up to 70?
We were in 86, I think, at one point in time.
So if though we increase the tax, it could not go over that amount that you just.
Well, you just know you can increase it. You just have to advertise this increase.
Okay.
So we equalize the rate back, and then wherever the board puts it. Proposed budget goals. We put on here. Most of these are the same from last year, or a little adjusted, but maintain current level of service. Put in here, stay competitive with staff salaries by implementing our multi-year compensation plan. We haven't taken any action on that. Jody and I will be working on that, bringing that back to you. I will say, and when Deanna gets here today, I think she just reported last week we had 7 vacancies. I think we've lost 2 or 3 more people in the last week. So that now you're talking over 20% of the department is gone.
That's in what, social services?
Social services. Yeah. Well, I think one position she told me they went to Frederick for an $18,000 increase, and I really don't necessarily blame the individual if that's what you're getting.
We can't compete with that.
You can't compete with that. That's reality. Maintain progress on capital improvement projects. I'll bet we have gotten all our big stuff, for the most part, off the table. Most of it is smaller stuff that we've been putting little pieces aside for, but we've certainly, all the middle school completed, and RESI and Health and Human Services, a lot of our projects are off the list. And obviously hold the line on real estate taxes and trying to, for me, I guess that's trying to make sure that whatever we recommend is something that's in line with our neighbors and it's cost effective for our citizens that pay the taxes. Budget drivers for the year. Remember, we just gave county employees, so county non-school, 2.5% COLA effective January 1. So they got their first paycheck was a January paycheck. So we had 6 months of that. So that was January of 19 through June 30 of 19. 6 months of that salary is in the current year's budget. We got to up that, double that next year because you have to have all 12 months. So it has to be in the budget for next year. So even though we haven't given any raises, you'll see in the budgets today the salary numbers are up because they had to account for that other 6 months of salary increase.
When does the sheriff's career development thing kick in? Was that?
We got to take official action for the board to accept that. That also should be soon.
Wasn't that supposed to be after January?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And that was part of Pay Point's mission to get that done.
So none of that's gone into effect yet?
The sheriff has not gone into effect, and we can always we can retro it back as far as the pay, but we're trying to make sure that the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and the program is appropriate and competitive.
Well, that gives us a half a year. I mean,
It does,
Yes.
it does. County health insurance increase, we've estimated, so everybody's budget is estimated at 10% increase. Andre, what was that cost?
It's about
$215,000 if it holds the 10%. We're a little concerned based on some claims we've had in the past year, but we won't know. Most of the local choice program counties have not heard yet on what their renewal cost will
Is
be.
the school's health insurance the same as ours?
Not exactly, they're a local choice, but they are a different plan. They're not on the same plan that we are.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, if you remember last year, with 1.2 million, 1,214,414, additional funding was provided to the public school system. We provided that from fund balance, one-time money, which means, and that's the equivalent of last year. That's approximately 3 pennies. And we'll recalculate how much each penny this year once, of course, I think once we get some of this through the Board of Equalization a little bit too. But, so that provided a 1% salary, and rather than doing 2% in January, they did 1% in July. That was their choice, the school board made. For all full-time contract employees after July 1 of 18, they did a step increase for eligible employees, and they did a 10% increase for supplemental pay rates. So that's just going into the budget. We basically have the equivalent of 3 pennies we had to accommodate for from last year to meet our current obligations, not accept anything new. The last one, this is just a cautionary tale, if you remember, and it's actually talked about on it's talked about in the cover letter, talked about the mini power plant. But one of the things that the county committed to when Dominion came was that years 6 through 10 of operation, the county would basically provide a grant in amount up to $1 million per year to offset their water costs. The town of Front Royal had provided a grant in years 1 through 5. So after the town had negotiated that, they came to us and made that request. The first year we started putting some of Dominion money away. We put $400,000 away. And the goal we talked about was trying to put, we'd done $500,000 a year for 10 years. We had that $5 million amount covered. The board stopped that. We got into a tougher budget, and rather than raising taxes, we decided let's use that money now. We'll deal with the $5 million later. Well, I guess the later's coming. Now, good news, it's not
called a can.
that can's
Called
gonna
that
catch up
can,
to
aren't
you.
you?
Yeah, we kicked that can too many times.
The other thing was that, as I was on council when that happened, we didn't expect the county to pick that up. We were throwing that out as a negotiation with Dominion Power.
And Dominion
We were
came back to us.
surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were surprised you guys did that. That caught us off guard.
Doug, on the page for a business attraction, I don't know where it is, down at the bottom, we've got stuff, we've got Chick-fil-A on there, that didn't happen. Is it still in the works?
It's still actually in the works. They're still talking
And
to
the
us.
training academy?
Yeah, maybe we need to strike some of that stuff out.
So
So
that's
training
how
academy.
we- yeah.
All right.
Like, I was looking at those on it, oh, well, okay,
All right. We'll take a look at that.
yeah, it's bottom of the-
And the Brotherhood Railroad signaling they're not doing any more expansions.
What is this?
I didn't know what that was.
Chick-fil-A is still site searching. They have not come back to us. We'd love to have them. We'd love to have a meals tax over 100,000 a year.
I'd like to have Chick-fil-A. I love Chick-fil-A. I love Chick-fil-A.
The
They're not open on Sunday.
but just that cautionary tale is like Bob said. We've kicked the can, and ultimately we're going to have to provide that incentive. It's on the back of the first section, page 1, 2, 3, 4 at the top. It says up there, as part of the incentive package for the project, county agreed to contribute up to $1 million per year for years 6 through 10 to offset the facility's water and sewer fees. That first payment would kick in under the agreement August of 2020. Obviously, that's not in the next fiscal year, the 1920 budget. That'll be in the 2021 budget.
No.
Obviously, if we have the ability to put some money towards that, that'll help us all that more. Again, we do have about 400,000 sitting in special projects that will help us a little bit towards that. Staff direction, what we have given to our county departments and constitutional officers, we have asked, again, give us a 0% budget increase, if you can. We've asked for that. Positions that were approved and started mid-year, go ahead and fully fund them. So that would show an increase, even, but we, as far as nothing new from that standpoint. Any additional increase requests we'll prioritize like we did last year. We'll put on a little separate sheet for the board to talk about any additional big money, new positions, things like that. The health insurance or salary increases, right now the health insurance is in the budget. Obviously that would be a top priority for us if we had to prioritize it. Any compensation study implementation would occur with available funding at the end of the process. So we haven't asked any of the departments put X dollars in. There's a few folks that have asked for, say, a 2.5% increase for a so-and-so employee who has done a great job. There's a few of those. I'd say, Andre, maybe half dozen, if that.
5 or 6.
But anything else, no across the board increases, all that we'll decide at the end of the day, like we did last year.
Do we know of any real changes with what these departments are going to get from the state?
Not yet. Yeah. Obviously, in the next week, 10 days, we'll know. There's talk about some additional increases, just like on the school side, additional money. Of course, just like, the state may give money, but I'll give a great example. If I go down to the Commissioner of Revenue's office, maybe it's 9, I'm making this up, but just as an example, maybe there's 9 employees down there. 7 of them may be comp board employees that are funded partly by the state. How do you know which ones? How can you give a raise to 7 of the 9, not the other 2? So we treat all our employees equally. So, the state may provide an amount for salary increases, say at 2%. We may take that and roll that at, say, 2.5 or 3%. But even other positions like a sheriff's deputy or treasurer or any of those, if there's an increase, it would partly, and you have to make up the benefit costs. There's still costs to the county at that standpoint. So again, budget personnel costs, we're estimating that health insurance increase of about $215,000. We'll know that answer hopefully in the next week or 10 days before we really start getting into budget work sessions. No salary increase proposed. I would note that in my preliminary survey already of some of our surrounding jurisdictions, I've seen everything from a 2% to a 4%. And that's just, you're not catching up. You're just, it's like DSS, you're just catching, you're trying to keep pace. You're not gaining anything there. Proposed 1920 positions. These are new positions. Full-time, the Commonwealth Attorney has asked for an assistant Commonwealth Attorney's position. Of course, he's asked that. We're up the list for the state to fund another position. And I think, I told Brian, I said, probably the only way you get it is this, the state funds the majority of that salary, but he's requested it. Chief had put in, this was before the staffing plan, he had put in for 6 firefighters, but only in the budget for 6 months. He was looking at those to come into the Ridgemont Fire Station. Of course, we're looking at that staffing plan and the grant application, if we're able to go for that. But that's where those 6 would go to. And then there were 2 part-time positions that had been requested to go full-time. One was in building inspections, which is a counter person, and one was in fire and rescue. Any questions there? If not,
I've just
take the sheriff's here.
quick question while we
Yeah.
What is the national cost of living increase? Is there any data on what?
I can absolutely get you that. I can look it up for you.
I'm just
Yeah,
curious,
yeah.
but-
I mean, usually it's between like 2 and 3%, 1.5 to 3%, somewhere in that range.
Usually comes out for the prior year, end of February, middle of March.
Yeah, so we can get that to you. But yeah, that's the reality. If you give a 2% raise with a CPI went up 3%, you're losing your ground.
Yeah,
Sorry,
and that's-
liability. That's
That's a
it.
concern.
I think, I know when, like, using social services, the example, a couple examples. There's one where we have all those vacant positions, we're not competitive. And then, Bob puts out for a general laborer. 5 years ago, we put that out, we'd have 60 applications. Now you got 4 or 5.
Yeah. Good luck.
Market's tight, when it goes back to that unemployment level, when you're at, 2 point something for 2.4%, not many people out there looking for jobs, so it's a little tougher.
And not in the social services
But
field
does it,
either.
Not the degree in social
does
services.
it also mean we're not being as competitive?
Yeah, it's part. It's part. It has to be part of it. Yeah, I think that's, and I think, when times are lean, and you go through a recession, people look to government jobs that have better benefits and leave and health insurance, all those things. When times get better, people are looking for the dollar. Where's the higher
Yeah.
salary at? I think that's just, that's the
The
reality.
economy's doing really well, that's what I hear.
And you have a younger workforce, but they're not worried about benefits, they're worried about the dollar.
Yeah.
What we gotta remember going through this is we can't spend what we don't have. We need to control where we're at. So if we're looking at a project we'd like to do and the funds aren't available, we gotta be careful. The House and Senate are in session, it's the short session, 45-day session. We don't know what unfunded mandates we're gonna receive. It seems like they balance the budget off the back of the local communities. Going through the Chairperson's Institute, that was a major concern with everybody, unfunded mandates. Sometimes the unfunded mandate doesn't look that way till you really look at it. So you really have to dot the i's, cross the t's, and if we're not happy, let them know.
Like it's gonna change it.
Might not, but might change somebody. It could lead to changing people. But we have to look at that, and that's something that's really, once it happens, it's out of our control.
The dynamics on the state level really changed in the last week.
Yep, and if you remember, when we got the new voting machines, that had always been paid for, but that has not been paid for. So that was a big hit that we took.
And you made
And we
I
had to
wasn't
do it.
here, but I heard you made a good point, something about the voting machines and you helped save the county some money. How did that, what happened with that?
What was that?
You did, there was something about the way that they were stored or
In the
something.
back room.
Yeah.
You had to keep them on charge, they had to be powered up,
Yeah.
you're paying electricity for something you'll never use. Which is, they've now been scrapped, they're gone, thank God. Because we don't need to keep junk around. It doesn't need to look like my garage.